today I am at Professor Meron's house. He was born even before the state of Israel was born.
Right.
He's 91 years old. He has a PhD at Harvard University. But today we're going to talk about a movie with Professor. This movie is called Golda. Golda was the only female prime minister of Israel. She was the prime minister during the Yom Kippur War. And Professor Mezzini was the spokesperson of Golda Meir. So, what do you think about the movie after watching it?
Well, I say that it was far better than what I feared. in the sense that I had initially quite a few doubts, but it turned out to be much better than we all
What were
expected.
The doubts?
The doubts were that it is very difficult to depict a personality such as Golda. She was heavy. She was already in her mid-70s, and she smoked 2 packs a day.
Also, that part was real. She was smoking a lot.
And it turns out, this is what we heard from Helen Mirren, the actress. She needed 3 hours to put on the makeup.
Why? To cover her
To make the makeup, to make herself look like Golda.
Oh, her, the actress.
The actress,
Oh.
3 hours.
Wow, yeah.
And I spent about probably 10 to 12 hours on Zoom with the director.
Wow. It's nice that they came
who was an Israeli.
Wow.
So we spoke in Hebrew, and he knew exactly what he was looking for, and I also spent time with the man who wrote the script.
He's not Israeli, right?
No, Nick Martin is an Englishman.
So was he good?
Yes, it turned out to be quite good, especially in view of the fact that he even mentioned my name in the script. So
Wow.
there is a part in the movie in which Golda says, "Get Mezzini to write me a speech."
Ah, yes.
Remember?
Which I never did, of course, but that was the idea. I remember because there was a major problem. Dayan was very gloomy.
Yeah, so that part was real.
And yes, absolutely.
He wanted the nuclear weapon
No,
option?
he was hinted
Okay.
at some point about the possibility of using special means. And she understood, and she looked at him and said in Hebrew, "Tishkach," which means forget it. That was the end of that one. But he was gloomy, and therefore there was fear that if he addresses the nation, then this could affect morale very badly in Israel. So this is where it came. It needed to write the speech, which I never did. The truth is that I was her press secretary during the war.
Wow.
And in many respects, I was unemployed.
Why?
Because she refused adamantly to give any interviews. The second day of the war, she called me in, and I had a pile of requests from journalists to interview the Prime Minister, and she said, "No way, I am not granting any interviews." And stupidly, I tried to argue with her. And she said to me, "Don't you know that there's a war on?"
So no time for the journalists.
And she probably was afraid that she would be asked a question
Did you know?
that Netanyahu is being asked all the time. What happened? What went wrong? Who's responsible?
Ability, yeah.
Who is guilty of the events? And therefore, during the war, she gave one press conference in English.
The one we saw on TV.
In English, with foreign correspondents. Now, English for her was a language in which she was at home. And this went off well. He also gave one address to the nation in Hebrew, which was not good.
Which wasn't good.
Wasn't good. But the anger was not good. She was tired. And as a result, we had some letters from Israelis who said, "Can we cheer you up a bit?" Look, there is a major difference between what happened then and now, and not necessarily in order of importance. The 73 war, we had warnings.
Right.
We had warnings in effect since April 1973.
But from what I knew, the person was an Egyptian. He was feeding Mossad intelligence.
He named by the name of Ashraf Marwan,
Yeah,
who happened to be the son-in-law of Nasser.
exactly. Yeah, I knew.
In other words, he knew everybody at the top level, and he had very good information, and he kept feeding the Mossad, for money, by the way, with information. But we had inclinations of war already in April 1973. And I remember the Prime Minister, Golda, called in at her home, at her official residence, not in the office. There was a big meeting of the defense minister, the chief of staff, the head of the Mossad, who, by the way, died this morning.
Oh,
Speaker Meir, who was the head of the Mossad then.
wow.
And Golda loved him intensely. He was very close to her. He died this morning at 98.
Wow.
And he's been out.
98.
98. He's been out for quite a long time. And as a result of that meeting, Golda wanted to know exactly what is going to happen if and when there is an attack. It being understood that Israel will not preempt, Israel will not launch an initial attack. In other words, Israel will not initiate a war.
Yeah.
And she was told exactly what the plan was. It became known as the concept. The assumption being that if they attack the regular army on the Suez Canal and on the Golan Heights, will be able to block for 2 or 3 days. The Air Force will come in and then will call up the reserve forces and will launch a counterattack.
So that was a good plan.
That was the plan, acceptable plan.
Yeah.
And bear in mind that the Suez Canal is about 400 kilometers from Tel Aviv, whereas the settlements near Gaza are 50 kilometers from Tel Aviv. In other words, we felt that we had the hinterland, we had the space. The war was not fought on Israeli territory.
Yeah.
She still was restless, didn't accept this, and the director of military intelligence took her down to the underground bunker below the headquarters of the IDF, to the war room, and again explained to her with maps and everything, this is what's going to happen. In May 60, we had an alert. Egypt was about to launch an attack. The director of military intelligence at the time, Eli Zaira, said nothing will happen.
Why would he?
He assumed that nothing will happen. His sources were such that the Egyptians will not dare launch an attack as long as they don't have long-range fighter bombers and certain types of missiles. He turned out to be right.
In that month
In
only.
May,
Yeah, in May only. Yeah.
In May, June 1970, he was right.
Yeah.
And therefore, the assumption was that he knows what he's talking about.
Okay.
And therefore, if he was right in May, maybe he's right again in October.
Yeah,
In October, he was wrong.
exactly. And the cost was so high because of this mistake.
The cause was enormous, but they made a major error in the day. See, on Yom Kippur, Israelis are either at home or in synagogue,
Exactly.
and therefore it's easy to call them up. If they would attack, for example, on New Year's, on Rosh Hashanah, then there were about 60,000 Israelis inside. And many were overseas. Go and get them. It was easier to call up. But above all, the war was fought far away from the heartland of Israel. Golda immediately set up a war cabinet.
Yeah.
Consisting mostly of 5 people who were very close to her. She, the defense minister, the chief of staff, and 2 other ministers who were also close to her, Galili and Alon. In effect, neutralizing the defense minister. They ran the war, not he.
Moshe Dayan, basically.
Not Moshe Dayan.
Who's the defense minister?
Yes, but
The war cabinet
they
excluded him.
Not excluded, but they neutralized him. You see, in the 6-day war, he was also a defense minister. He ran the war.
Yeah, he was a hero.
He was the hero of the war, not the prime minister. This time he was not. Because as defense minister, he was part of the group that bears the responsibility.
Right, yeah.
And she ran the war in an amazing way. She displayed enormous understanding of tactics, strategy, politics, diplomacy, economics.
Wow.
Because remember, part of the Arab war against Israel then was also oil boycott of many countries, which led most of the African nations to suspend ties with Israel.
Wow.
And for Golda,
yeah.
she saw this as a personal insult, because much of her reputation was built on relations with Africa.
Wow.
But she sat there. Somebody asked me once, how is Golda? I said, she sits there like a Buddha. Tough, strong, solid.
Wow.
And she also understood very well the nature of Israel-American relations. Because she was very deeply involved in that from the time when she was foreign minister. And therefore her connections to Kissinger
Was strong.
and Nixon were very strong.
In the movie, there was a line that she spoke when Kissinger came to her and said, "I'm American first," and then Golda replied, "In this country, we write from right to left."
Yes,
Did she actually say that?
This is the story that went around. I don't think she
okay.
said.
But that was clever.
I can tell you another story.
Okay.
First of all, in the movie, she calls him Henry and he calls her Golda.
Okay.
No way.
Okay.
It was always Madam Prime Minister and Mr. Secretary. No first names.
Oh, but I thought they
no
were
first names.
informal. Okay.
No first names. At some point during the negotiations with the Syrians for a separation of forces agreement, which, by the way, is still in force as we speak now, 50 years later. And that's the only agreement that binds us with Syria. he came back from Damascus and he was angry, and I said, I feel like I'm a rug merchant in an Oriental bazaar trying to sell all sorts of things. And at some point she said to him, listen, Mrs. Secretary, I'm an old woman. I was born in the 19th century. Mm-hmm. He looked at her and said, Madam Prime Minister, the 19th century is my specialty. He had written his doctorate on the 19th century, on diplomacy. I knew Kissinger because I audited one of his courses at Harvard.
Oh, wow.
Didn't take it for credit, I audited.
Okay, yeah.
With millions of other students. He was a brilliant man, but he was mean as a professor. Sit down, you don't understand anything.
Wow.
But in retrospect, two people had strategy in the Yom Kippur War. One was Sadat.
Yeah.
His strategy was, I know I'm going to be defeated militarily, but I will get the Americans to change their views and to start pushing Israel to withdraw.
Yeah, to get the land back.
And I'm prepared to sacrifice my ties with the Russians.
Wow, yeah.
Which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
He launched a limited war, which we didn't know at the time, and Dayan felt that there was nothing to stop Sadat from coming to Tel Aviv. A long way to go. But he said the limited war, get the Russians out, the Americans in, and Israel begins to withdraw. The Kissinger was the other one who had a strategy, which became known as the step-by-step approach. Namely, let's start Arab, Egyptian, Israeli talks on issues that can be solved now, such as limited withdrawal, exchange of prisoners, a supply of food, water, medicine to the besieged Third Army. Let's not bog down on key issues, Jerusalem, refugees, security, and recognition, so which have not been resolved
till now,
to this very day. And it worked. It worked because Israel too at the time is not prepared to go into basics. In other words, he had a strategy. I am not sure what is the strategy of Netanyahu now.
But before we jump to Netanyahu, I have a question. I heard that Sadat offered a peace treaty before Yom Kippur War.
He offered peace agreement conditioned on the following elements. If Israel will give me prior commitments to total withdrawal from all the territories taken in 1967, meaning Sinai,
West Bank, Syria,
Syria,
Golden Heights,
Gaza, and Jerusalem.
So no way. There's no way.
Second, resolution of the Palestinian refugee problem according to UN resolutions, which means right of return.
Wow, that's a lot of refugees. Too many,
Third, restoration of United Nations emergency force at Sinai. Fourth, Suez Canal open only according to 1888 Constantinople Agreement, meaning Egypt has the right to close the canal during the war. Straits of Tiran open according to international law. Go to the international court and get yourself a ruling. There's nothing there about direct negotiations, recognition, and peace treaty. So he did mention the possibility of a peace agreement, but the conditions,
It's too harsh.
prior commitment, Israel couldn't accept.
So between this peace agreement and Yom Kippur, or if you can choose, now of course you can't, but if you could.
What happened after Begin? Begin was able to secure a peace treaty, totally divorced from the Palestinian issue.
Okay, yeah.
In the Israel-Egypt peace treaty, no mention of Palestinians, Jerusalem, refugees, withdrawal in other sectors, or
Only on
any
Sinai.
progress towards a resolution of the Palestinian issue. Strictly Egypt issue. And Suez Canal opened unconditionally, Tehran opened unconditionally, peace treaty, diplomatic relations, trade relations. We signed with Egypt either 30 or 31 agreements. Most of them are not being implemented, some are. Some are. Egypt is now playing a very important role in the Gaza war.
Yeah.
We prefer Egypt and Qatar.
Yeah, I hope they.
So the Yom Kippur War led to a major diplomatic breakthrough, which resulted later on in 3 agreements before Sadat came here, and then a peace treaty. I keep telling an American audience, imagine Sadat came 4 years after the war. Sadat came in November 1977. Imagine Emperor Hirohito going to America in 1949, 4 years after Japan surrendered. It was incredible.
Yeah, the history would be so different.
Totally different, incredible. I mean, I was one of the people who stood here at the gates of Jerusalem when he came. When Sadat came, and we cheered him like mad. Oh.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter, Marianne, she was then 5. She was in kindergarten. And she came home on a day when he was here crying. What happened? Sadat was passing by, and they gave them flags, so they would wave at Sadat.
So Israeli or Egyptian?
Both.
Wow.
So what are you crying? She said, I wanted the Egyptian flag. Why? Because the colors are nice.
She likes red.
Next time I was in New York, I went to the UN.
Okay.
And I bought an Egyptian flag. She has it to this very day. So I said to my wife, can you think for a moment our daughter crying because she didn't get an Egyptian flag?
Wow.
Now, that symbolized the Noah's change.
We often hear that the Yom Kippur War changed the whole generation.
It changed the whole
Is it
generation.
in the positive way only, or also the negative way?
Mostly in a positive way.
Okay.
Because between the 6-Day War and the Yom Kippur War, we were living in a dreamland.
Dreamland.
In a la-la land. Because of the enormous victory territories. We thought we were the biggest power in the Middle East between Morocco and India. And the economy was flourishing and immigration was coming in, and we really thought that sky is the limit.
Wow.
There's a great deal of pride and haughtiness, and we paid a price for that. Okay, very, very good. Not only 2,600 dead, but many wounded. The war cost us, 73 war cost us a year and a half gross national product, which at the time was, I think, about $18 billion or something. That's a huge fortune. It did create a scar, certainly a scar to this very day. How did we have an intelligence failure? And this is where there is a similarity with
This war. Yeah.
Mindset. We knew where the Egyptians, what the Egyptians had, we knew what the Syrians had. We knew where they were. And still the feeling was that they will not have the guts to do it.
It's the same.
That they think the way we think. We did not think the way they thought. In other words, we didn't think for a moment that they felt that they'd come to the end of the road, nothing to lose. That's legitimate.
Yeah.
This time, it's far more complicated. It's not only mindset, but the Israeli government, the now governments, basically encouraged the Hamas by allowing Qatar to every month bring money.
Yeah.
Suitcases full of money, between $30 and $40 million a month, which were used to pay salaries to civil servants in Gaza. Thinking that this is one way of buying peace in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, it makes sense because they think if they live well, then they will not attack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Netanyahu's policy also was to weaken the Palestinian Authority. If you weaken the Palestinian Authority, then you strengthen Hamas in Gaza.
Yeah.
It turns out that Hamas began to plan this attack 10 years ago, when they started building the tunnels. I don't know if you've seen on television.
Yeah, the big one with the car going. Yeah.
And similar thing you have between Egypt and Gaza. You see where most of the heavy stuff was from, including trucks. It's called the Philadelphia Axis. And they planned it for years. And they acquired the weapons and the training and the communications and the military structure.
Yeah.
In other words, they knew what they were doing. And what annoys us no end is that there were many signs. A long time ago that were ignored. Another totally different situation from the Yom Kippur War. This war was fought for the first time since '48 on Israeli territory.
Yeah.
Not occupied territory, Israeli territory.
Yeah.
The entire settlements near the Gaza Strip.
That's the major difference. Yeah.
Another major difference is, had they wanted, the Hamas could have driven to Tel Aviv. Nothing stopped it. It was Shabbat, it was a holiday.
Yeah.
Four regiments that were supposed to be in that area were called
In West Bank.
to the West Bank.
So why didn't Hamas go north? Instead they went south.
Because they didn't understand that there was nothing facing them. And their plans didn't call for going to Tel Aviv. I think that most they hoped was to reach Kiryat Gat.
They didn't know they could. Yeah,
They
wow.
didn't realize they could. And then they stopped and they started looting and killing and raping and babies and so on, and capturing people. And this held them back.
So this was not the original plan? The plan was the plan to rape and kill and
The
loot,
plan-
or to go to...
First of all was to enter Israel, capture Israelis, kill Israelis, destroy Israeli property.
Mhm.
They also were totally unaware that there was a music festival
Yeah, rape.
where hundreds of Israelis were.
Yeah.
We are still investigating who gave the permit
Yeah,
to hold this festival with so many people.
yeah. I saw on the news the families are suing the government.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mhm. And there's a major problem there. Another difference is 1,200 people dead in one day.
Yeah, it never happened
Mostly
since the
civilians.
Holocaust. Yeah.
On Israeli territory proper.
Mm.
Another was their ability to launch, by now 17,000 rockets at Israel in the last 2 months.
Wow.
The fence that we built turned out to be useless. We didn't realize that they would use parachutes
Mm.
and drones.
Mm.
We didn't realize that the second wave would be not non-Hamas Gaza civilians
Yeah.
who came to loot.
They were unarmed, right? They were civilians.
The second
Yeah.
wave, unarmed.
They just took advantage of the
Advantage
situation.
and burnt and killed and looted and hostages and so on.
Mm.
And therefore the shock here now is far greater,
Mm.
especially in view of the fact that Netanyahu promised last elections in which he was elected, I'll bring back security to Gaza,
And he failed.
and he failed completely.
Mm.
And since then, the Chief of Staff said, I'm responsible. Defense Minister said, I'm responsible. Head of Military Intelligence said, I'm responsible. Army, Shin Bet, or the security services, head of Mossad, we are all responsible.
Except Netanyahu.
Netanyahu.
So Golda Meir, after Yom Kippur War, she
She
resigned.
said, it took her a while. You see, here's another difference between the two wars. The Gaza war came after almost a year of enormous division in the country
Yeah.
over legal reforms.
Exactly.
The Yom Kippur War, in July, the Knesset rose. It ended the 4-year term.
Mm.
The government then became a transition government,
Mhm.
and we were to go to national elections October 30.
Mm.
In other words, the country was on the eve of national elections.
So it was weak? What does it imply?
It implies that the heads of the governments were not in the mood to alarm the country that something is wrong.
In 73.
73.
So, yeah.
If something is wrong, then you're running a campaign based on the fact that you never had it so good.
Yeah.
This is what Golda told Dixon on March 1st, 1973. We never had it so good.
Mm.
And And therefore, newspapers, for example, were asked, don't stress that there's something wrong on the borders.
So it feels like whenever Israel is divided or when there are internal problems, it becomes the perfect timing for the enemies to attack.
Yes, the assumption being that it will take Israelis much longer to rally together.
Mm-hmm.
It took Israel probably 10 hours to understand the enormity of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And to start calling out the army. The country went into counteroffensive probably 2-3 days later. But the country is still reeling from the impact of what happened, with a great deal of sense of shame, humiliation.
Yeah.
How the eighth most powerful army in the world found itself.
And also intelligence.
And
also
massive intelligence
yeah.
failure. And as time goes by, we hear more and more, let's say, the women soldiers who were the outlooks, those who looked at the computers and so on. They warned. They gave warnings.
But were they not taken
And they were not listened to.
because of their gender?
Partly because they're girls and they're a 19-year-old and they don't understand. And partly because nobody believed them. And partly because the mood was coddle Hamas. Coddle, pamper Hamas. Give them money and so on. And things will be quiet. It's not the case.
So now it's already almost 3 months since the war began. I'm not going to ask you how long the war will continue.
I'll tell you something else which never happened. We never removed 120,000 Israelis from the border areas, from the northern part and the Gaza area, to hotels, and guest houses. It's never happened before. Never happened. It's certainly not for such a long time.
But it's a good policy, right?
It's totally demoralizing. Because these people are now saying, we're not going to go back until our security is assured.
Yeah.
How can you assure security? In other words, the goals of the government at the moment are get the hostages back, and destroy Hamas.
Yeah.
You can destroy Hamas, but you can't destroy an ideology.
I know.
And Hamas is also a religious ideology.
Yes.
And an ideology that does not accept the right of Israel to exist here as a separate, independent, Jewish, Zionist, sovereign state. This also has never happened to us. There's another problem. In 1973, the government functioned. The home front was looked after. Now the government is not functioning.
Can you explain more?
In terms of providing aid to those who had to leave their homes.
But I heard there are some, what do you call it?
Voluntary organizations.
A lot. The
Huge
government
number.
also paid some money for people who had to stay in the hotels.
Until they pay this money, it takes time. There's enormous bureaucracy. But the government basically, I could say, apart from the Ministry of Defense, was paralyzed. And still is in many respects. Not functioning well. The health services are at the seams. You now require, for example, the services of psychologists and psychiatrists.
Yeah,
Because there are more and more people who are traumatized.
I know. Yeah.
Many of those who had to leave their homes.
Mm.
Something else. We find ourselves fighting, this is what the defense minister said, on 7 fronts.
Mm. Mm.
Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Syria,
Yemen.
and Yemen. 5
And
fronts.
Palestinian.
5 fronts. And Yemen.
Jordan.
No, Jordan.
Okay.
Right.
So 6.
Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iran, of course,
Mm.
and Gaza, and the West Bank.
What about the Arabs or Palestinians
The-
living here in Israel?
Basically, they have been quiet, and I'm not aware of any problems.
Just a few terror attacks here and there, but it's
Yeah, no, minor.
No.
Nothing like the previous when you had
Intifada?
Israeli, not intifada, but you had lynchings of Jews by Israeli Arabs.
when was this?
2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Acre
Yeah.
restaurants were torched.
Hello.
Bat Yam,
Mm-hmm.
Jaffa,
Mm.
you didn't have it now. Furthermore, there is an enormous difference between the type of government we had in 73 and the government we have now.
Mm.
Now it's the most right-wing nationalist messianic government we've ever had.
Mm.
In 73, it was basically a Labour-led coalition
Mm.
with Orthodox, not Orthodox parties, but not messianic.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean?
It means the messianic, it's a Ben-Gvir and Smotrich.
Far right.
Far-right settlements. Ben-Gvir is talking about resettling Jews in Gaza Strip.
Mm.
And some Israelis feel that 2 leaders at the moment are becoming increasingly irrelevant. One is Abu Mazen
Mm-hmm.
for health and age, and the other is Netanyahu
Mm.
for different reasons. Netanyahu has, in addition to everything else, 3 charges against him in court. His trial is ongoing.
So, Professor, how will this war change the Israeli society, this generation?
It will teach us to be more humble. It will teach us not to rely so much on our intelligence services.
Mm.
It will teach us not to rely on experts.
Mm.
It will teach us to question many of the foundations of our policy.
Mm-hmm.
It will, on the other hand, it will also exacerbate, it will probably strengthen the center-right nationalist wings in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
It will strengthen those who will say not a chance of any solution to the Palestinian problem.
But,
Meaning you can have good relations with Saudi Arabia, with
with the
the
Arab
Gulf
countries.
states, with Qatar, Oman, or
Mm-hmm.
Bahrain, and so on, Morocco. But that doesn't solve the Palestinian issue.
Because I'm from Taiwan, and this interview is also enabled by the.
Can Taiwan learn
Yeah.
anything from this? Don't trust the experts.
Don't trust the government.
No, you don't have a choice. Make sure that your relations with America are sound,
Mm-hmm.
because one of the outcomes of the Gaza war is Israel's almost total reliance on America. Therefore, you've got to have very good relations with
Americans.
with the United States, who are only your major, like us, major protector and ally. You have to, what you're trying to do to expand ties with others, you have to have a system of reserve call-up, which you can activate very rapidly, as we did here. In other words, very quick response if anything goes wrong. I don't know if Taiwan can learn from Israel another possibility, that is an economic boycott by the mainland. We have not yet been faced by an economic boycott.
Yeah, because the economy in Gaza is not
And
to mention.
Taiwan, which I'm sure you do, has to have enough reserve food, fuel, basic goods for at least 8-9 months.
Yeah.
The thinking here is this war is going to last at least another 3-4 months.
So, thank you so much for your time. It was so informative.